Hi, this is Bill Hartzer, and this is the Digital Marketing Podcast with Bill Hartzer. Today, I have the pleasure of having a special guest today, Alan Bleiweiss from AlanBleiweiss.com, and I've known Alan for years, and we both kind of have something in common that we do SEO audits. Primarily, Alan working, I guess exclusively doing SEO audits. Alan, welcome to my podcast today. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, so Happy New Year. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, especially
Sure.
starting the new year. I love the fact that, and greatly appreciate that I get to start the new year with this, so thank you for that.
Sure.
Uh, I've been doing SEO for quite a while now. It started with web development in January of '95, so 25 years this month. And pretty quick from there, got into project management for an agency in New York that served enterprise clients. And I learned from there how to serve enterprise clients at the highest level of quality, yet where the agency taught me that you provide the same level of quality to your small business clients and you'll always succeed. Uh, Web development, project management for many years, did web development on my own for many years, integrated marketing that I had experience with before the internet into that. Started doing SEO around 2000. It became a hybrid offering in different versions and forms over the years. Uh, by the mid to late 2000s, it was mostly to all SEO, then it became all SEO. And audits became a need at one point because sites were getting penalized by Google and losing rankings. And so I started doing proper audits around 2007, 2006, 2007. By 2011, that was my exclusive offering, audits and the related consulting. And I've been doing that ever since.
Sure. So I started doing SEO audits back in around 2000, 2008 or so, and at an agency that I worked at, an SEO agency, and we started to provide that kind of that service, the SEO audit service for clients, and it's interesting that it's been well over 10 years now, and some of the it's interesting to see some of the basic concepts have really not have not changed from crawling, basically from crawling issues to on page and on site issues and so forth. It really hasn't changed too much. But over these past 10 years of doing audits, how has it changed? And is what have specifically have you seen change?
What's changed has been the evolution and refinement of the processes. Uh, First and foremost, because spam. The first time somebody realized they could game the system, that became viral pretty quick, and it got out
Sure.
of control from the ability to figure it all out on their end, on Google's end. And so spam was the first point of entry for a need for Google to change how they figure everything out. From there, it's the scale of the internet and the fact that web developers do things different ways, and nobody follows consistent standards for execution of methodology. And where Google used to claim they could figure it all out, and they have said that with many different things about SEO over the years, it always turns out, due to scale and the way the internet works and the way developer minds work, that's not true. Also with content, right? Content writing, there's too much diversity in how people write content. So they can't just
Sure.
figure it all out, and they continually need to get more help in figuring it all out. That's where schema came from. That's where all of these different additional features and methods of enhancing your presentation to the search engines came into being, right? That's the evolution. And then finally, the overall scale, just in general, with trillions of pages indexed, their systems are so complex, and there's not just one algorithm, there are multiple algorithms. A lot of them have legacy functionality that is built on and enhanced and tweaked and polished. And they're not perfect, right? So there's continual evolution in the process of being able to, quote, figure it all out as the primary way things have changed. And then beyond that, how Google can change the services they offer to their consumers and what they show them for their own business goals, whether people in our industry might like all of them or not. Google's going to make changes for their own business goal reasons, right? And we need to be able to take advantage of that for our clients or our employers if we work in-house.
Sure. So what I hear you saying also is that, certainly one of the difficult parts for the search engines is that, if we asked three, example would be if we asked a couple of different developers, to create a website for us and it needed this particular functionality, each of these web developers would, create it in a different way, even if it actually had essentially the same web design. There would be, and so multiply that, I guess, by thousands and thousands of, different, millions of web developers out there, or and so forth. That it gets much more. You can see, I can see it, but it gets much more difficult for them to crawl, and as they get more technical. It comes probably down to resources, where I've seen a shift. Personally, I've seen a shift in the fact that, Google used to just crawl any URL they could get their hands on, or, that they could find. And when you bought a new domain name, they would start crawling it. And certainly when you made any changes to a site, now they're kind of, I think it comes down to more of a resource area where, in fact, where Google has to kind of decide, okay, well, based on importance or based on whatever certain factors that, we may or may not necessarily crawl these URLs and so I see, as they are spending more of their resources on crawling JavaScript or executing JavaScript and so forth, that they kind of have to be a little bit pickier on the actual URLs that they're crawling.
Yeah, they've absolutely had for quite a while now a need to prioritize the crawl sequence, not even getting into the fact that they don't render client-side JavaScript at the time of the crawl, right? So there's an additional separate sequence. So much of the web now is JavaScript driven, and where client-side JavaScript brings in a whole additional set of challenges. Yes, there are opportunities for quality functionality. However, there's challenges in the crawl sequence where Google does not render and crawl at the same time, so that's a whole additional layer. Prioritization is a critical need they have, right? And if a page has been around for 2 years or 5 years, and they previously determined it was a low priority page, you can make a change today and not see it crawled for a day, a week, or a month because of a low prioritization score already assigned to that, as one example as well. Yeah.
Sure. And so then we get, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, page load speed, and that's something that one area that, we certainly, want to optimize. And I think of it not necessarily just an SEO, thing. And, that certainly, it certainly kind of starts with SEO because of the fact that, that Google has said, or well, both Bing and Google and any the search engines have basically said that we want pages that load quickly because it provides a better user experience. But we're actually optimizing not necessarily just for SEO, but we're optimizing the whole web server and the whole the whole back end essentially.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, absolutely. So page speed issues, when we really get down to it into the weeds of it, by improving page speed issues, you're going to make your own server environment more efficient, so you can handle a heavier load, right? And Google's going to be able to process pages faster as well, so it's beneficial to Google's own systems for pages to be faster for those reasons. And then there's the fact that whoever comes to your site, whether it's from a search engine organically or not, they're also going to get benefits from faster pages. So everybody wins across the board. Every participant in your web presence is going to benefit with faster page processing.
Sure. The same with optimizing and essentially loading resources. When a request is made, for a particular web page, loading that resource, whether it's whether actually you need to load it or not. I mean, it could be that you're loading something that you don't necessarily need to load. And so if you're talking about thousands of pages or multiplied by thousands of views and so forth, that can also save ultimately on bandwidth and costs and server space and a lot of other things that are kind of related essentially to the same thing.
Yes.
During so what I'd like to ask you a little bit about time to first byte, and specifically about that. I have had a couple conversations, I guess, on Twitter about it with John Mueller saying and asking him about time to first byte and whether or not getting our time to first that TTFB time to first byte down to very 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 as quick as we can, basically, to to have it as that number as a load as low as possible. Google has said, and John Mueller has told me that that they don't really measure that, but that's actually kind of as I understand, kind of a window into other things that that affect that time to first byte.
Yeah, absolutely it is. You're correct in that, of course. Here's the concept, right? There's one first time to first byte measure, and then there are multiple other time to first byte measures, all related to one single page. Because a single page on the internet is not just a page, it's a page that has raw code, and that raw code requests multiple scripts and multiple style sheets and multiple fonts, images, and media assets, right? So there could be 50 processes, sure, or 150 or 300 processes for one page. And each one of them has its own time to first byte. And the time to first byte, while not a metric itself that is important enough for the search engines to necessarily say, hey, your time to first byte is too slow, we're gonna ding you for that. It's the canary, one of the canaries in the coal mine for server problems, right? Because what that means, sure, is how much time does it take from the time you make a request from your browser until the first byte of code for any one asset on the page comes over to the browser, and that's just the first byte. So if it takes 2, 3, 5, I see this a lot. There are JavaScript files, right? And the JavaScript file might be the 16th or the 20th asset in the page itself to be requested. And then the time to first byte just for that one script is 5.5 seconds, but it hasn't been even requested until 3 seconds have already passed. So now it's 8.5 seconds just to get to that moment in time. Then the file has to finish downloading before it can be processed, right? time to first byte is a
Sure.
really good indicator when we're doing audits. It's a really good indicator for the fact that you've got server issues. And if you see a pattern of very slow time to first byte, even if you don't have consistently slow pages all the time, that means you're almost certainly vulnerable to intermittent delays on a scale over the course of time that can harm you. It's not just time to first byte that matters, though. I use webpagetest.org as one of my multiple tools for testing. And there's a details report. And in the details report in webpagetest.org, below the waterfall chart, there's a breakdown of line by line of every asset and how long it took for each step in the sequence for that individual asset for that one page. And it starts with the request start. How long did it take from the time you submitted your browser call until the server processed the start of the request itself? Then there's the DNS, the first time you hit that server for that group of assets on that page, the initial connection to the server itself, the SSL negotiation, then the time to first byte, and then the full content download sequence. So all of these steps, and they all can show areas in the server environment where you have speed delays that if you're not looking at it at this level of detail, you won't ever know where to fix your server problems properly.
Sure. So you mentioned webpagetest.org, and I certainly use that as well as Google the Lighthouse, as well as I also look at GT metrics as well. Are there any others? As far as web page load speed, any other tools that you can think of?
Yeah, so just a quick note that there are other speed testing
Sure.
tools that are out there that can offer help in different ways, like Pingdom, for example. Sure. However, I found those don't have the kind of depth of quality, consistency, or detail specific to the type of work I happen to do to serve my clients, right? However, I do for speed, there are different tools that I'll use as well for different needs. So for example, I have web developer tools are really helpful when we're getting into the deeper understanding of where there might be wasteful script processing that doesn't need to be conducted, as well as understanding and testing tools related to the overall page quality. So for example, the W3C HTML markup testing tool can show more clarity to errors at the code level that can be interfering with your page speed functionality needs at the server or on the browser, right? So those are a couple of examples of additional tools that I use for specific circumstances in my audit work to help get more clarity about what's really going on.
Well, it also comes down to user experience and the whole we're not just optimizing necessarily for SEO, but it's also about having a fast page really comes down to user experience and how and how quickly that page loads is makes it just beneficial for the user. I mean, they won't bounce and leave the site. What are some other what are some other areas? I know that sure, we can have a fast page load speed and so forth, but certainly things like site structure and just the user experience as well. I'm a big believer in not having a huge, what I call a mega menu where we just have, 350 pages linking to 350 pages all in the menu with, a drop down with 20 items that goes, and each of those 20 items to go to another sub menu and so forth. Certainly, is that something that you take a look at as well during audits?
Yeah, and I do so, absolutely. I do so because search engine optimization, first and foremost, can be boiled down in an oversimplified way to the fact that the search engines attempt to emulate human experience in order to make decisions about indexing and ranking, right? And
Sure.
so user experience is the end consideration in that. Also, where outside of SEO, any issues that relate to user experience that matter to SEO are also going to matter to people who don't come from search engine organic searches either. So everybody can be harmed or everybody can benefit from a lot of those factors. And when it comes to 350 links, right, linked to all the things, the truth is, from a human experience perspective, the moment a human being starts to become overwhelmed, or at least some people who visit your site start to feel a bit overwhelmed by the choices from a psychological perspective, that's a red flag that it's going to be a problem for the search engines as well. And where there's going to be differences between different human opinions and how well the search engines make use of that, plus the fact that there's other signals search engines care about as well, right? I also want to make sure that we mentioned the fact that we're not talking about link sculpting. Both you, Bill, and I understand that we're not talking about trying to artificially game the system with link sculpting as it's discussed in our industry. Instead, we care about efficiency of access to information people are looking for, intuitive access, and the least friction possible, where too many links causes friction and delayed choices, right? And when it comes to SEO specifically, we can get into the granular detail about where people end up getting lost with thinking that link sculpting is a way to waste time, to spend time. To me, it's a waste of time because there's bigger fish to fry. The reality is, internal equity from one page to another gets passed with proper link models on a website, within a website itself. The links within the site are going to generate equity distribution for SEO. And if I have 20 links that I'm pointing to from one page, let's just, for argument's sake, take the fictional scenario that each link is going to get 1/20th of the equity from that page passed to each of the links it targets. If there's 100 links, then you're going to dilute the equity you pass to each of those pages. And at a certain point, Google stops sending equity because there's just too many links. So, yeah.
And that's the site structure. That means, basically when we're talking about when you go essentially going to the homepage and finding a link, whether it's in navigation or somewhere, and being able to click that link and go from the home page to another page to another page. We get into, when we get into certainly sites, and especially large sites, we get into issues where, where they're including, XML sitemaps with thousands or, hundreds of pages or thousands of pages or millions of pages, where we have to understand that just providing a list of URLs in a sitemap, an XML sitemap file to search engines doesn't really necessarily pass on that link equity and so forth from page to page. That, we may tell them about that page, but that's not necessarily, going to help in the long run for SEO. I mean, I've come across during my, audits where looking at different factors, not necessarily factors, but looking at, what information Google has about a site, using a site colon command, domain.com, and seeing how many pages they know about versus how many are in Google Search Console and how many actual pages that we can crawl using a crawler. And certainly I recall specifically a real estate website that told me specifically, they have the hundreds of thousands of pages. They have close to 500,000 pages on their site. And when I started to crawl the site, I found a typical crawler could only find 8 pages because the requirement was that you had to put in a city name to be able to, in a search box essentially to see the pages. Uh, and so, that's one particular scenario where obviously a SEO audit and that issues like that will come to light.
Yeah, I see this a lot. This is one of the examples. Before we started this discussion, you had pointed to one area of discussion being things you see often, right? And this is one of those things I see
Sure.
in most audits, especially because I work on some smaller sites. It's typically smaller sites that already have a lot of traffic. However, I do a lot of audits in the really big site realm. 4 million, 8 million, 12, 20 million pages indexed, right? And the bigger the site, the more likely this is going to be a serious issue. It's one thing to be able to have an on-site search system that lets human beings look for information by typing in words that they have in their head. Except most
Sure.
on-site search systems are off the shelf and really poorly executed. So even if you thought you could use that to get content to your visitors, it's most often not executed well enough to do the proper job. Search engines can't be expected to automatically, formulaically enter every word combination under the sun into an on-site box to try to, quote, discover content for search engine needs, right?
Sure.
And then you get duplicate content results with different word combinations in the search. It's a mess. If you just have links in your sitemaps, yes, Google can discover those pages, except if Google cannot match that page access from an on-site, non-client side JavaScript rendered access path, then that means there's going to be a conflict of signals about how important that page really is. If you're not giving your visitors effortless, frictionless access to your content from internal navigation, and having a no-script link set is part of that model, because not everybody has JavaScript. Even if you do use JavaScript that's client-side based, right? If you can't get it that way, then why are the search engines going to even trust that this page is a highly important page for ranking needs? And this is where internal link equity comes in. Just by listing a page in a sitemap, you miss the opportunity to send additional equity to that page from other pages on the site. It's not good enough.
Yep. So we're about out of time, and so how can we get in touch with you, and so forth? About certainly if we want to follow you on social media, or have a question, or hire you to do an SEO audit.
Yeah, first, I want to thank you for having me on. I greatly appreciate it. I hope you and all your listeners have a happy new year.
Great.
Beyond that, getting in contact with me, social media, it's Twitter. It's based on my name. It's purely my name, Alan Bleiweiss. So it's at ALAN BLEIWEIS like Sam, S like Samantha, at Alan Bleiweiss. And my website is the same. It's alanbleiweiss.com. And on the site, you can go and you can read about my audit services and the benefits and different things in there to help you understand whether an audit might help you, as well as pricing. My pricing is really straightforward. And if you think you might want to get an audit from me, you could just use the contact form on my website. We'll take it from there.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks again, Alan, for chatting with me this afternoon. This has been the Digital Marketing Podcast with Bill Hartzer and special guest Alan Bleiweiss today, January 2nd, 2020. Thanks again, Alan.
Thank you.
Thanks.